Good catch.
Very good.
Your surgery went well.
Yeah. They cut out the lipoma. They said it was about the size of a golf ball.
Ooh,
So pretty good, growing big.
yeah,
Yeah.
but nothing serious beyond that.
No, they sent it for pathology. I don't think results are back yet, but they said lipomas are very, very, very rarely cancerous.
Yeah.
You know, it's like 99.9% benign.
Huh.
So nothing to really worry about. But they tested just in case. So
Yeah.
we'll see when those results come back. But it said it should be nothing to worry about at all. So
Good. Good. So I had a text from Bill Nagel last night, who said he probably wouldn't be here today, but he had his knee surgery. And he said he's doing very well. As a matter of fact, they indicated that he's ahead of schedule and
Good.
doing well.
That's a good place to start. Did he
Yeah,
have total knee replacement or did he have a repair or?
it was, I'm not sure whether it was partial or full, but
Yeah,
kind of feel like maybe it was a full replacement.
yeah. Well, I hope he gets the relief he's hoping for.
Yes. I don't recommend it.
mm,
No. Yeah, seeing Madeline's gone through 2 of those now. She's in recovery stage. I guess hers was what, about 5 or 6 weeks ago now.
Yeah,
And it's a haul.
yeah. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Is she doing okay?
Yeah, she is doing okay. Yeah, she's been impatient with it and, feeling while she was on schedule, she certainly didn't feel okay a good
Yeah.
part of the time, but it's a major trauma to your body to have that be that opened up. And
Yeah.
you have a lot of hardware put in there. There's this big flat piece and this other thing that's stuck into your bone, and it's an awful lot of adjusting.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Good. Well, I think it's just us. I think Joanne is away this week. So it's just
okay.
you
Okay.
2 guys here.
Very good.
Good. So questions, thoughts?
I my practice has not been as regular, but I have done it the past few days. But so I would categorize myself as getting back into the flow
Good.
after somewhat of a hiatus, but
Well,
it's felt good.
Yeah, a forced hiatus, absolutely.
Yeah.
But no questions?
Not right now. I have come up with a few little questions, but
You don't want to.
I'm going to let you get started here.
Well, whatever.
Well, if you'd like a question,
Sure.
so in 4, I'm thinking about the down part of the position, how much squatting and folding is going on right in there. Is it identical to 3?
Well, it's completely different from.
Yeah,
three.
that's what I'm thinking, but I'm not sure why, because when you get to 5 and 6, those are the same with the C curve. Is that right?
Yeah. So 4, 5, and 6 are all doing qua folds. It's really only 2 that's a qua squat. And
Okay,
that is definitely a distinction that you need to be clear about. How far you fold down or squat down is really there are a couple of different considerations. One, of course, is what is the physical condition of your body? How low can you squat or fold and maintain your structure and all of the other relationships that we've been working on. And so there is no absolute right or wrong. It has to do with your particular body. The other aspect of that in all of the movements is how tired are you when you get to 4? Have you done too much in 1, 2, and 3, and maybe 4, so that you don't really have the power left to fully do 5 and 6? And that's really actually that's actually a note out of today's lesson, but it is one to be really aware of, because you may need to think about, if you're finding that to be a fairly consistent case, you need to think about doing 1, 2, 3, and 4 a little bit less movement, so that you can still have full power in 5 and 6.
that's interesting. I haven't really thought about either in this or in the form of any kind of fatigue factor. I almost feel like there's rising energy from beginning through to end.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So that probably isn't an issue for you at the moment. If you're doing, and part of this is also how many repetitions you're doing. Are you doing 20 of each posture?
I normally do 20, although the past few times in the last session, when I watched the tape, you asked us to do 6. I found that a real good way to focus on the posture without that level of doing 6 gave I think almost a sharper focus than doing 10 or 20 in a way. 10 or 20, I seem to have more variation. I don't know if my mind doesn't stay in the same place long enough or what.
I think that's, and that, when we talk about fatigue and doing postures, it's not only physical, it can indeed be mental or energetic. Not being able to stay present through 20 repetitions can be an indication of another kind of fatigue. It might not be physical. So you just have to try to stay aware and alert to what is actually happening. So good question. I hope that helps a bit.
Yes.
Anything for you?
With extending the mind, does it help to keep some part of your focus on the mind, like at a point within the mind, as you extend it through the body? I find when I try and say focus on extending the mind into the hands, it becomes difficult to trace a path without kind of like two endpoints.
Mm,
And it gets lost along the way, you know, and then, you know, all of a sudden it feels like, you know, like there are gaps, and then you pick up somewhere maybe in the wrist, into the hands. But if I keep a focus on a point in the mind, it seems to be much smoother and easier. But I don't know if that's kind of going down the wrong path, if that really those gaps are blockages and things that need to be dissolved and worked on.
I think the only way to know if that's a blockage is to try dissolving it and see whether that resolves the issue there or not. I'm not sure I completely understand what you're saying about extending the mind, in that that is not simply staying focused on a point in the mind, but in moving that point in the mind through the body
Mhm,
and actually feeling that movement.
mhm,
So, because it is, I think, in the feeling of that movement, really beginning to be able to be aware of the actual movement of the mind through the body, not just dropping down, but being able to go out to the 5 extremities and back into the center and feeling it from all 5 simultaneously.
mhm.
And I will say that takes time. It's much easier, of course, to feel it in the hands usually, and probably easier to the crown of the head than it is to the feet. But eventually, that awareness, it's interesting because in my own practice, I would say I went through that period of feeling like I could get it to the crown of the head, I could get it to my fingertips, but I couldn't feel as if it went fully to the feet.
Mhm.
And then it was like one day there it was.
Mhm.
And I hadn't been particularly focusing on that as a, as a separate part of the practice, but it was just, I think, cumulative
Mhm.
in the work that eventually my awareness opened. Clearly the energy is moving there already. But if we can feel it and feel the mind extending through the body to those points, then it can increase it significantly.
Mm.
So I don't know if that
Yeah.
it's one of those things that I can't, there is no, there's no pill.
Yeah,
There's no do this and it will work.
okay. All right, maybe that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, it's kind of a weird experience for me. I find if I really only focus on the movement or the sensation of the movement starting in the mind and moving out to the extremities, the language part of my mind jumps around by trying to name the part of my body that I'm trying to move it to. So, I start in the mind, and then it's got to go down the neck, and I got to get it to the shoulder, and down the upper arm to the elbow, and I find that not helpful.
No.
And distracting, and it makes it kind of segmented, like chunk,
Yeah,
instead
chunky.
of water running down the gutter to where you're going. But if I hold some attention between the 2 endpoints, it almost feels like you're pulling a string taut, and now you have a path, and then you can feel the energy moving down the path.
That's all right.
I guess maybe that's a better way to describe it. And then by trying to maintain focus on the 2 points, the language part of the mind doesn't seem to naturally want to jump and start like naming stuff as you go along, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
because naming things as you go along is thinking too much.
well, right.
And that definitely gets in the way.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, yeah, you do have to let go of that and really, well, yes, you're trying to feel the pathway, the energy moving through specific pathways. You also don't want to be focused on getting it point to point to point to point,
Mhm.
but rather really going for the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, any other questions at the moment?
Kind of just with the central channel,
Mhm.
man, that's tough to feel.
Yes, it
I
is.
guess that's, I don't know. It's like you get a sense of it. But whenever I get that sense, it seems to increase like a total body awareness and energy, your sensation of the energy everywhere. Which then almost becomes like too much feedback and kind of makes like a lot of noise. And it becomes tough to maintain focus on the central channel because now it just seems like you're feeling more energy everywhere.
Mm.
If that makes sense, you know, it's like when you first do it, it almost seems easier. Then as you keep doing repetitions, it feels like it becomes harder to maintain the focus on that one aspect.
I think part of that too depends whether you're actually reaching the central channel or whether you're still working on syncing to it.
Sure, that
Um,
makes sense.
and the other thing to really be aware of, and this, of course, this really becomes an issue in 5 and 6, and that is that well, what's happening in the central channel is of primary importance in 5 and 6. You also cannot lose track of the fact that you're working with a circulation between the left and right and the center. And so you have to not let yourself get only focused on the central channel in 5 and 6, but rather on the circulation and endeavoring to allow yourself to be aware that your primary focus is the center, but it is the entire circulation that's important too.
Okay.
That's interesting. In 5 and 6, my mind and my focus is on the C curve as I'm doing it. And it feels, when I get it right, and what I'm thinking of as quote unquote right at this point, is moving from either, the C curve to extension or extension to the C curve, be very gradual and be very symmetrical in terms of, the top vertebrae and the bottom vertebrae in the spine. And that has seemed, when I get it, to give me more of a connection up through the top than I have felt before. For me, connection going down has always been the strongest for me, for whatever reason, I don't know, but connection going up has always either been sort of a dream or barely there.
And that all makes sense. When you think about it, from the very beginning of our of our relationship, if you will, we've emphasized sinking the energy in the body. And so I think that it's perfectly understandable that that's the one that initially we recognize and feel most easily. The rising energy is naturally always also rising, but how far you're able to raise it in your body is something that grows over time and practice. And indeed, many people I think at least in my experience, in beginning to work with bringing the energy up their body, may only feel it come up to heart level, or if they're lucky, maybe the throat to begin with. And that it takes time before they can actually begin to get it to actually move up to the crown of the head. So, on the other hand, going back to the beginning of what you were saying, certainly if the C curve is functioning well, that will begin to move the energy through the spine much more effectively, much more efficiently and fully, and therefore you will get more awareness of the rising and the sinking probably. In addition, the central channel, of course, is not in the spine.
Right.
So you're also working with, well, certainly wanting to be aware of that movement of the spine and the energy through the spine, but you're also, when you get to 5 and 6, you're really beginning to want to have that spinal movement, but be able to really focus on that circuit between the left and right and central channels, among other things. So, anything else I can,
Okay.
question? Anything else at the moment?
No, that's all good.
It's all good. So, actually, I was going to talk today about we're, as you know, just really at the end of the what I refer to as the beginning level in this practice. And we're about to move into what I'll begin to refer to as intermediate 1. We also have intermediate 2, and then one of the beginning advanced levels. So we're making progress. But in this review, we want to really look at the main points of the 6 movements. So the big overarching point that applies to all 6 of them is that you must make your transmission smooth so that you don't feel your system shutting down and rebooting. You don't feel that you come to the end of one movement and then wait a bit and go on and start again. There's a phrase in the Tai Chi classics that certainly equally applies to this. From posture to posture, the internal energy is unbroken. So when you're going from one movement of God's into the next movement of God's, the energetic flow within your system should remain constant. Now, if in the next movement, you actually want to make it a little bit stronger, that's fine. But then you want to go to the end of one movement into the next and have that energetic flow remain the same. And then it is your choice within that flowing if you want to make it go a little bit lower or a little bit higher. But what is absolutely critical is that from one movement into the next, there is not a shutdown of the system. And the metaphor for this is like when you make steel, which many people have never seen. I fortunately have had the opportunity of that, and know the truth of this. When they come to a holiday, Christmas or Easter or whatever, they keep the blast furnace on for those 2 or 3 days. And the reason why is that if they shut it down, it takes another 3 or 4 days to get it back up to where it was originally. So it costs a lot of money, a lot less money to keep it going than it does to restart it. It's the same with energy moving inside your body. You simply don't want to have it shut down. So if you can, you want to keep it essentially the same feeling when your mind inside your body is moving between postures. And you want to have that same, want to have that speed that your mind is moving inside your body remain constant. But remember that this is equally true for the transition between posture 1 and posture 2 and 3 and 4, as well as at the end of each movement, how you transition into doing the movement again. So posture 1 is essentially really to get your system kick-started. And above and beyond that, the moving back of your fingers coming down is to make sure that you're doing, what you're doing is like carving down your abdomen, like you're washing clothes on a washboard. And that's how you actually get the soap into the clothes and then get the
Something
dirt out.
froze at my end.
I'm sorry? What, Bill?
Yeah, a little message saying my connection is unstable. I don't know what that means.
What did I say?
The washboard.
Oh, you're, so this next sentence will clarify that. So as you can go deeper and deeper in toward your spine, this movement is really moving everything in your guts and increasing the space that is between every part within your abdominal cavity. Did that help you, Bill?
Yeah, I missed a couple of sentences because my connection froze up for a minute.
Oh, okay.
That's
Well,
I'm good.
so part of that movement in 1, after you've gone up and you're coming back down and in, is pulling that energy down through the body, is what that's talking about. And it's like washing the clothes of your body is, I think, the reference we were trying to make there. So it is so that it has space for the blood and chi and other fluids to go into it. You're not having any place that's compacted. You're opening up all the space. And movement 1 is vertical. It's simply basically up and down. Now in movement 2, you have to start to activate your qua. The squeezing down and then letting the muscles come up is just the movement of the external qua, which is going to affect the iliopsoas muscle and all the tissues in your pelvis. The way the tissues in your thighs, your pelvis, and your spine are connecting to each other. That is on the physical level. And that's where you want to go first in movement 2. Now, the next thing is that you need to have a clear sense when you're circling your arms, how to do a coronal circle. One of the big things you're looking for in a coronal circle when you're doing it in movement 2 is to maintain the continuous lengthening of your tissues. There's a tendency of the arms to go out, and then when you begin to come down, to lose that. Rather than being continuous, there is a collapse or interruption, or it breaks and snaps back like a rubber band that's pulled up too tight and snaps back. So what that's talking about is that in that movement, you don't want it to collapse out here as it's starting to go down in particular. Well, yes, you reach this point and it's the beginning of the bend, but the bend does not collapse, it lengthens in. So the next thing is to get a very, very clear sensation of how, when your hands go up, that they're also compressing and carving the washboard up through your internal organs. But in this movement, it's happening upwards, whereas in movement 1, it was down. The other big thing about movement 2 is that because you're bending down, there is a tendency for people to get too much stimulation or too much blood to their eyes, and they start going funny. So it's important that you keep your eyes on a very even keel and do not have the sense of projecting out of your eyes that much or projecting into your eyes that much. Now, it's okay to do both of those things, but not so much that your eyes get blurry into any shape, manner, or form, or you get any sense of being spaced out, because that says the way you have done the movement has distorted the energy going into your brain, and that's very, very uncool. The next thing in movement 2 is that your breathing can become a challenge. It becomes a challenge because when you bend forward, especially if you go down lower, your hands go lower and in, unless you have a lifting in your internal organs, you could have a tendency to squeeze your diaphragm down, and your diaphragm may stop moving. So you really have to make sure that your diaphragm is moving in movement 2, since that can obviously impact your breathing. Now, movement 3, you really have to get the sense of the coronal movement going. And this is going to compress and release your internal organs in all the directions that they go. You got the up and down going in 1 and 2, but now this circular rotation is going to start getting the space not only up and down, but also what is crossing your organs. The sense of releasing whatever is stuck between your organs and horizontally opening them up. And that's rather important. Now in movement 3, you're going to have vertical and horizontal movement and coronal movement. The movement as a whole is simply this idea of a big coronal circle, like going around the clock. But before that, within that coronal circle, you're going to have the sense of deliberately opening your qua, that you're going up, say to 3 and 12, and deliberately closing your qua when you go down to 9 and 6. And then there is a lifting of your hands. As your hands are lifting up to the hour, they are closing. And as they are going out, they are extending and opening. And that is to make sure that you have the opening and closing of your arms along with the way your waist is turning, causing clear and present movement inside your internal organs. Now, one of the biggest things in movement 3 is that this is where you should start as much as you can getting a sense of fluids in your body. Now, most people will feel their blood pretty easily, but you also have a fluid that goes between your cells. And you can actually get to a point where you are feeling something that's moving like blood, but isn't blood. And that's probably your interstitial fluid. Now, the other big challenge of movement 3 is keeping your feet flat on the floor, having all these motions going down to your feet, but pushing down into your feet and having your feet be stable when you're lifting up from your feet. This will become very different at the sides at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock, because there is a tendency at those 2 points to go higher on one side and lower on the other. And you want to keep them at the same relative height so that the change of internal pressure inside the body is equal. Now, movement 4, the largest thing is that you've got to connect your legs to your torso. When you fold down and when you come up, the bending and folding of the quad is absolutely critical. But what is also critical is that when you're coming up, you can feel the sense of fluids and sense of energy movement coming up. Your body is what's really lifting your hands. And then when your hands start coming down, they don't just come down. They come down because the folding action you're doing is pulling everything from your hands down through your body to your feet. And that's the way in which you want to think about the folding down. Now, part of this is that you have to pay attention to stabilizing your spine and your back, because your back should have a real tendency to could have a real tendency to kind of hunch back. It has to stay connected to your quad. So the exercises we did with being able to move up and down with your tailbone being stable are really rather important. Now, as you do this, you're probably not going to feel your left and right channels yet. What you will feel is a sense of your legs and everything coming up to your arms. And then when your arms are coming down, you will feel something going down. But as you get further with this practice, you want to make sure that as your hands are coming down, that your forearms and elbows are right on your left and right channels. And it's not that your hands are pushing the chi down your body, although you can do it that way, and that may be the way you have to start. It is as much the closing of your feet and your legs, sucking your energy downward, that's causing your body to fold and your hands to go down. At the most beginning stage, you may just end up having a sense of pressing energy through your body to your legs. But once you get a little past that, what you're really looking for is that the folding of your legs is what is bringing your body down. And the folding of your body down and your palms going down is actually moving through your etheric body. So every single place that your palm is, you should get a feeling going through that part of your body. And this is simply because of the connection between the etheric body and the physical body. With this, we also have the same issue with the eyes. When you're going up and when you're going down through movements, when you just have a gap, and that lets you know that you're too tense, or it's saying that the energy going in and out of your brain is not even. And because it's not even, it's disturbing your vision. Keep in mind, and this is rather important, many people think that we see through our eyes. No, you don't. You see through your brain. Your eyes are like a camera, and it comes back into a computer. The camera just takes the image. The computer is what sorts out what's happening with that image. And that's why you can manipulate the image from a computer. Your brain is interpreting it. It's not actually your eyes. But if your eyes don't have clear vision, either going out or coming in, or just being neutral, then you're not getting full data to your brain, and your brain can't do all that it can do. At this stage of the game, you need to notice something. We talked about this earlier. Are you starting to get tired? You find that after a couple of days or over a period of a week, that by the time you're getting to movement 4, you're getting tired. So when you're doing 5 and 6, you don't have optimum power. Then what you need to do the next time you flow is to do movement 1, 2, and 3 a little bit easier, so that by the time you arrive at movement 4, you have as much or more power than you were feeling in 1, 2, and 3. So that's an important consideration too. Now 5 and 6. There are a number of things. In movement 5, this movement is a continuous circulation between coming up your central channel, splitting out to your left and right channels, coming into your central channel and up, and splitting out, splitting the energy of your body out into the left and right channels, and then bringing it up the central. In this one sense, Taoism is not different than most of what's done in yoga and tantra, because they're also working with the exact same circulation. It's not the only circulation, but it is the first one that you go after. And as part of this, your spine needs to bend a little bit from the head to the tailbone when you go down, and it needs to, with the raising of your kwa, raise your spine a little bit to get your hands to come up. Bend your spine just a little bit to get your hands to go down, but then raise your spine and your kwa to have that power your hands coming up. The object here is simply to make sure that the chi moving through your body is really moving through it with a certain amount of oomph, and that can be very important as well. Now in 6, it is the same thing. The only difference is that you're going up the central, you're going up the side channels and coming down the central channel. Whereas if you do it the other way in 5, it is coming up and splitting at the top to the head. Whereas when you go the other way in 6, when you get down to the Dantian, you simply let your hands split and spread your chi to the sides. Then if you can, remember that the ideal is to get the center of your palms over the crown of your head. And then you're pushing the chi down the central channel. And then from the lower Dantian, it's splitting down to the feet. Now in the beginning, most people actually have trouble getting their arms up to the crown of their head. So do less, even if your arms only come up to your throat notch, because that's as much stretch as your body has. Then with your mind, make your chi go down from the crown of your head until it reaches your throat notch, and then let your arms and chi that you are bringing down from your head join together. So again, the downward movement is what you are focusing on as being more important. You've done many of the upward movements, opening up your left and your right channels. But if you can't really get the central channel moving, it's going to be very hard to split it. And if you can't split it into your left and right channels, it's going to be very hard to get your left and right channels to actually come to your center to allow you to come down again. So these are some rather important issues. Now in movement 2, you could just have your palms cross when they are coming up. But what you really want to do in movements 5 and 6, because you're closing your qua first and condensing, then from a closed qua position, you're opening and closing. It's much better if you can, after your hands pass, continuing, connecting Lao Gong, that they keep on going to the wrists. And it is where your two wrists cross that is coming up the central channel or down the central channel. You may have the problem that your body is too tight to do this in the beginning. And it may take several months before you can actually do that. And that's just fine. Just be aware. This is the direction you're going in. So, good. First, any thoughts or questions? I'm sure you're going to have to sit and read this again too.
Yeah, that was a lot. A lot to absorb,
It was.
and but a good reminder.
It's just
some
it's a
stuff.
good, I think a good review, pulling a
Yeah,
lot of things
yeah.
together. Yeah.
Yeah.
But any initial questions?
I guess, Rulo, let me put a sentence together for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
A question about kind of toning it down in the first postures to be able to focus on the later postures. Do you mean tone it down kind of in every way, both like the physical movement, so instead of maybe like doing the 70%, you're really doing like 50%, but also how intensely you're focusing on energy movement?
It can be all of it, yes.
Any or all of it?
Yeah.
Okay, whatever it kind of takes to be able to.
But usually it's the physical that wears out first.
Okay.
So making the movements a little bit smaller.
Okay.
That doesn't mean allowing things to collapse or not extend or not lengthen or do all the things they're supposed to do, but they can be smaller. There is no absolute that you have to do anything in any size. It really has to be where you can work and get the maximum benefit from it at that moment, at that stage of where you are.
Okay.
Anything for you, Bill?
No, well, I'll ask one thing with
Yep.
the 70%. I've been, you've always emphasized that from right at the beginning, and
Yep.
and I get that, but in 5 and 6, in terms of the spine, I get the feeling that we should be, I don't know what 70% means for the spine. So, I mean, when I'm up, the spine is erect and straight, and when I go into the bow, I feel like I'm in the bow. It's not like I'm 70% of the bow.
So
Does that make sense?
yeah,
I mean, I'm in the bow or not in the bow, and then everything in between that's going gradual. Doesn't feel like I could go a lot further in either direction. Does that mean I'm doing too much emphasizing that? Because I think it feels good and it definitely helps my low back feel better.
not necessarily. I think the thing about Simply focusing on the bending of the spine. As always, you neither want it to be too limp or too tense. So obviously not doing enough or doing too much. So you have to find where the middle range is in that. And that has to do with feeling that the movement of the tailbone and the neck are connecting all the way through the spine, but not causing tension, but opening. And that movement can be pretty small.
Yeah.
The spine is flexible, but it doesn't have unlimited flex.
Right. Yeah. One thing I would differentiate, if I force it and try to use sort of musculature to make it happen, that does not work. And if I relax and release both into the curve and out of the curve, that's when it really works.
That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. That's using the principles we talk about in terms of lengthening, in that yes, you can lengthen by tightening and stretching out, but you actually can lengthen more by releasing and
Right.
allowing that opening of the space. So that's really, I think, it sounds like that's what you're doing, which would be absolutely correct.
Yeah, exactly. It's certainly the aspiration, I would say. Yes.
Well, yes, it's a growing thing. and it is, I think, particularly important that you get that in 5 and 6. Well, you can certainly have a spine bend in the rest of the in 1 through 4. It's absolutely essential in 5 and 6. And learning to really have it function the way we've been talking about is going to make it easier quite a ways down the road when we get to movement 7, which I'm not going to show you at the moment. Because I don't want to confuse you or have you play with it at this point. So, but 5 and 6 are really preparing you to be able to do 7. So that's good, what you're working on. So I was going to suggest, depending on the time, we do a little flow, do a short flow. We haven't got a whole lot of time, so maybe I will suggest that we do a 6 posture or a 6 repetition flow.
Okay.
So after all this talk, take a moment to just stand. And step out and feel your alignments. Excuse me. Sink your mind through your body. And sink your chi through your body. And then extend your mind through your body. And then whenever you're ready, begin to flow. Good. So, just a couple of things. It seemed to me in 2 and 5 that both of you kind of had the feeling that the central channel ends here. It actually ends here. So this, of course, depends on physically what you're capable of doing and where the energy is rising to. So if when you come up here, you get to this point, and that's as high as you can get the energy to go in your body, indeed, that's where it splits. But eventually, you would like this to go all the way up. Okay? And remember that 5, you're not here, you're here. And when the right movement, David, that here you are continuing the bend to this point and then extending, and that can go, again, you want to think of going on up if you can. And 6, of course, is going up here and then down if you can. But you have to really try to feel where the energy is moving in the body.
Okay.
So, any questions for either of you?
No, nothing came up that time.
Okay,
No,
so I will send you all of those notes and actually a little bit more.
okay,
So when you have time, try to look through this, and if you have questions at all, write them down.
Okay.
And so you can remember them. And we'll continue on next week.
Sounds good.
excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, Bill. Hope you continue to heal well.
Thank you for those good wishes.
And I hope Madeline does too.
Yes, we're both getting back into the flow of things.
Good. She'll be much happier when she can move.
Yeah, she's walking more comfortably, so
Oh,
you know.
good.
Very good. Hello to
Oh.
Jane.
Yep, she's doing well.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, good to see you also, Adam. Take care.
Yeah, good seeing you. Feel better.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Take care, Bill. We'll see you next
Bye.
week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
So, do you have any form issues?
No. With the surgery, I haven't practiced too much of the form,
Yeah.
you know, they have, so, no issues came up this week. You know, it's tough to fit it all in, David.
It is. I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. It is. God's is not an easy practice.
Yeah,
There's a lot.
right.
And so, no, I entirely understand. Just try not to let the form disappear.
Yeah, I hear that.
So maybe one of these days we'll flow together.
Sure. Sounds good.
Good. Well, I know you have to go to work. so-
Yeah. Thanks. I know, I gotta get the schedule out or everyone's gonna have my head.
Oh, no. can't have it. I'll come right after them.
All right, there we go. Well, good seeing you. Glad to
Good
be here in
seeing you.
person.
Yeah, have a good day and good week and.
You too.
Yeah.
Thanks, David. It's gonna hit the head before getting on the road, okay?
Okay,
All right.
don't blame you.
I know, it's
It's a drive.
a little bit of a drive down to New Haven.
Yeah, just a little.